Now, when you think of Kensington High Street, what do you think of? The Royal Borough of Kensington. Sounds so regal, doesn't it? Everybody, of course, knows Kensington Palace. We know it's the home of many senior royals, and for many of a generation, we know it really for being the yuppie, the Sloane Ranger, that sort of thing. Of course, really, in the 1980s, it became incredibly famous, all thanks to the late and beautiful Princess Diana, who was often seen trotting up and down the streets, looking for designer gear or just simple shopping in high street brands. She was spotted so often, nobody really batted an eyelid. It is on this street, of course, that she took the very young princes, Harry and William, for some normality, regularly to their McDonald's, often seen also in the local Boots. But there was a little bit more to Kensington High Street. It wasn't always just about the yuppies. Of course, it's a very affluent area. And in a recent video, we told you about how the superstar singer of the 1950s, Alma Cogan, resided just on Kensington High Street in a flat that was filled many an evening with all the superstar people like John Lennon, etc. What really is interesting about Kensington High Street, for a short period way back in time, it almost rivaled Hollywood. No, Neil. Oh, yes, it did. And as ever, let me explain. You see, just off a small side street on Kensington High Street resided the Viking Film Studios. Oh, yes. It's hard to believe because this particular studio was really active from the 1920s right through until the 1980s. But its biggest period really for movie making was around about the 1930s to early 50s. This was when it changed sort of hands in a strange direction because it was the evolution of television. Now the BBC were looking for studios at the time, so they took hold of Viking, as did ITC, ITV, to make similar movies. Not movies as such, but productions, live television production, that sort of thing. You see, the BBC had already got similar studios down the road in Hammersmith at the King's Theatre, which is now called the Lyric Theatre. A little bit further away from that was Shepherd's Bush Empire, which had been a thriving variety theatre, but was now a live audience theatre for BBC television. So Viking Studios, although a little bit smaller, was used for training and making live TV programmes. But also, it did see some major stars going through the very small doors. Viking Film Studios was really unique because they only really dealt in what they call B movies. Now, for those that don't know what a B movie is, maybe you're too young, of course, but if you went to the cinema way back in the 30s, 40s and 50s, this was your extra feature. It wasn't, say, the main movie from 20th Century Fox, Warner Brothers or MGM. It was normally made in your local vicinity, So the great thing about Viking Film Studios was the fact that it was near residential housing. Very easy for them to replicate people going in and out of doors, making domestic comedies, light thrillers, detective series. That's what they did. Many stars, as I say, went through those doors, including the brilliant and gorgeous Honor Blackman, soon to become famous, of course, as Pussy Galore in Goldfinger. Who remembers this debonair man? Derek Bond, apparently one of the glamour boys of the Rank Film Studios. Even a very early Sean Connery came to Viking Film Studios for an audition, but sadly didn't get the part. A lot of their movies still last and are still shown on television today around the world, including the very, very much loved serial on radio turned into a movie, Dick Barton's Special Agent. Who remembers Dick Barton and Snowy White? Well, it all started filming just off Kensington High Street. Hard to imagine just how busy and how exciting it must have been. But of course they had a lot of rivals as well. They had Elstree Studios. Of course they had a lot of rivals as well. They had Elstree Studios, Pinewood, Shepperton, Walton-on-Thames and Nettlefold, all basically looking for the market to entertain us on the big screens, the Odeons, the Gaumont, the Regals. Wherever you went, everybody went to the cinemas in the 1950s. Like all good things, of course, it had to come to an end. The lack of people now going to the cinema really accelerated the demise of Viking. They changed over to television, as I said, and they had a very successful run for quite a long time. But the downside for Viking really was its size. They really only had 2 studios, but they could get a big scenery truck down the side avenue. Now today, that's the only real bit that exists of those studios. This is a residential area now, and this is the picture that I'm showing you at the side of the screen of where people now live. It's amazing to think, as I often say when we're sort of revealing these historical facts, that they're sat in their front lounge having no idea, of course, that millions of people will have watched a major movie, B feature, filmed in that particular location. Perhaps they've even no idea that Viking film studios actually existed. Now, as ever, it did have something of a royal connection because the Queen, as she then was, later known as the Queen Mother, did come down on occasion to secretly watch a few of the movies being made. She was a huge entertainment fan, loved going to the theatre, loved all the movie stars, and as I told you before, was fascinated by many of their beauty secrets and regimes. This literally being in her back door round the corner from Kensington Palace was ideal for a quick pop in to see which stars were in town and what movies Viking were making. As I say, it kind of all wrapped up really around about the early 1980s. And then naturally, planning took hold, residential properties took over, and Viking was no more. It became part of the film industry of Great Britain. So while many film studios still survive over here, the Sheppertons, the Elstrees, Pinewood, there's many more that simply bit the dust as we all turn to television to look for a brand new form of entertainment. And it's fascinating to think, isn't it? We're all looking for new forms of entertainment now, where television was king, seemingly digital has taken over. I'd love to know what you think to this particular story today. Did you go to the cinema a lot? Did you like the B features? Who were your favourite B features movie stars that went on to become superstars within a few years? As ever, let me know what you think to Kensington in Hollywood in the comments below. Neil Sean in the very heart of Kensington, London.